Hey guys, it's Conan the Murphy guys. I'm reviewing this a movie that I don't think is really getting any attention right now whatsoever, and I figured I would check it out, and that of course is Tyler Perry's new film, Acrimony. And what Acrimony is essentially about is we center on the character of Melinda, and basically Melinda is someone who recently has had some sort of injustice against her involving her husband, and, you know, basically, she's recounting the story to a therapist, all about the very complicated relationship these two have had. Basically, he has cheated on her, and since then, she has really never trusted him, but she still keeps going back to him, and basically, that's what we're dealing with here. So Acrimony in general, I really was not looking forward to this movie, and that's understandable why. I mean, every Tyler Perry film I've seen, I have absolutely hated. I have yet to see a Tyler Perry film that is at all competent. I have yet to see a film that actually feels like a complete film. But you have to understand that all the Tyler Perry movies I've seen have been very similar in the sense that they've all been Madea films, and each one, mind you, is worse than the last. Honestly, all the ones I've seen, besides the Madea Christmas, you know, each one I've seen pretty much has been worse than the last. You know, Boo Madea Halloween is worse than Medea's Tough Love, and, you know, Boo Madea Halloween, Boo 2 Madea Halloween is worse than Boo Madea Halloween. That's the best way to sum it up. So, while I wasn't at all looking forward to this movie, I did have some hope that maybe because this wasn't a Madea film, that maybe I would actually enjoy this more. Maybe I would find, you know, why Tyler Perry is this, you know, very esteemed director, why people are such a fan of his work, and no, I could not have been more wrong. Honestly, I should have gone into this movie the same way I would a Madea film, because Acrimony is quite possibly one of the worst things I have seen so far this year. This is a terrible movie that gets nearly everything wrong, and you think it's trying to say something intelligent, it's not. We'll get to that with the writing and such, but there are some positives with the film, starting off with the cast. And that is the one thing I will actually give this movie. I do think, for the most part, not everyone's good, but a lot of the cast actually does do a fairly decent job. Let's first talk about Taraji P. Henson. Great actress, honestly. Really great actress. I don't think she gets enough credit. Once again, though, I don't know why she keeps subjecting herself to these movies. The character she's playing we'll get to a little bit later, but I do think she did a good job with this film. You know, you can tell that there's a lot of rage inside of her, and, you know, Melinda's someone who pretty much throughout the film is a loose cannon. I mean, she will fly off the handle frequently. You know, there are a lot of things she's overreacting about, and she is a bit of an unreliable narrator in that sense, and I think overall she did do a pretty good job here. And even when this movie is at its lowest point, I do think she was consistently good. I do think that, you know, she's a really great actress, and I do think she did a good job here overall. And then Lyriq Bent as well, I thought was pretty good as the, you know, as her main husband here. I did think he did a good job in this movie. And this character is very interesting because he's someone who we're not necessarily supposed to like, but you can really understand where he's coming from as a character of Robert. You know, he does genuinely care about Melinda. He does his best to provide for her, but he just has a lot of problems with money and such, and I do think he did a really good job with his character overall. The two do have decent chemistry. You know, obviously when she's screaming at him, that's, you know, they're not supposed to have any chemistry there. But when the two are just being romantic, it does actually work. I do think they worked well together overall, and I was impressed by that. Everyone else here, I wouldn't necessarily say they're bad, they're just really, really bland. Particularly, Crystle Stewart, she's like the main sort of girl that Robert ends up pursuing. This is the girl that he ends up cheating on Melinda with. She was okay in this movie. She just seemed kind of bland to me. There really wasn't much to her in the movie. There's really not much to her character in general. She's simply just the other woman in the story. That's really all she is. I do think that she and Lyriq Bent did have some good scenes together, but there just isn't really much to say about her. Both of Melinda's sisters, I really did not think they were too good. You know, both both Ptosha Storey as Brenda and also Jazmyn Simon as June. I thought both of them were really bad in this movie, honestly. Constantly throughout the film, they are trying to tell Melinda, you gotta leave this guy, he's not good for you, and that, you know, he's this terrible person, but she always seems to see the good in him, and I'll talk about why this is very contradictory at the end of, you know, once we get to the writing and such, but I really did not think they were too good. I will say it was interesting to see Danielle Nicolet in something that wasn't The Flash, because of course this is the woman that plays Cecile in The Flash, and she's good here. I did think she did a good job overall. And then both Ajiona, Alexus, and Antonio Madison as the young Melinda and young Robert. Again, not bad. I just felt they were really bland, and there just really wasn't much to them. And that's really what I say about most of the cast, and most of Tyler Perry movies in general. They're not necessarily bad actors. They're just really bland, and there really isn't much to them. Now let's get to what I really want to talk about, which is the directing and the writing, because holy shit, we have a lot to talk about. We really do. The directing in this movie. The tones in this movie does not know what it wants to be. I'm going to say that right now. It does know if it wants to be a romantic drama. It doesn't know if it wants to be a revenge thriller. Does it want to be a suspenseful movie? I mean, it has no idea what it wants to be. There are parts of this movie where it feels like it's trying to be this very complicated romance drama about these two, their relationship, and where it really went wrong. Then there are parts of the film where it feels like it's trying to be more of this, you know, psychological thriller, getting into Melinda's head, kind of showing how she isn't really the most sane of women, and, you know, maybe examining that a little bit. There are brief points in this movie where they do that. Then is it trying to be a suspense film? I mean, it's so disjointed, honestly. I could not tell what this movie wanted to be, and it really did not make sense to me. But easily the biggest problem with this movie, without a doubt, is the writing. Oh my god, the writing is terrible here. And it's not because the whole movie is bad. To be honest with you, the first hour or so of this movie, I wasn't hating. I was there like, wow, I'm actually not hating this for once. This is really surprising. It was actually really refreshing for me to just come on here and say this is just a mediocre movie. That's all I was going to say. I was going to say it wasn't really anything that great. Was it really original? No. Was it cliche as hell? Yes. Is it things we've seen before? Absolutely. But I really didn't think this was anything that bad. I mean, sure, it is just, you know, it's got a lot of very similar things where, oh, he cheated on her. It's like the worst thing ever. They focus on their relationship. There are so many over-sentimental things. Like, in the first act of the movie, they not only, you know, they have all these problems with, like, their house. She gets into, like, this really fatal car crash. Just, again, this is what Perry does. He just throws, like, 5 things at you, and it becomes so overly done that it honestly does become funny at points. It really does. And this stuff shouldn't be funny, but the way that Tyler Perry does it, it comes so out of left field that it's just ridiculous. It really is. And, again, that's something that I'm used to. I'm used to seeing that in a Tyler Perry movie. I am used to him, you know, giving us all this ridiculous stuff and stuff that's supposed to be really emotional, but don't come across as a soap opera. That really is what this movie is for, like, the first hour, and, again, I was fine with that. But then we really get into what the whole thing is here, because I should mention that the only time that Robert is actually in the wrong, because he does have some small problems throughout the film, the only time he actually cheats on her is when they're, like, first dating. Like, I'm talking, like, when they're 19 in college. That's when he first cheats on her. All the other times, it's just Melinda thinking that it's going to happen again, and her paranoia getting the best of her. And in intelligent film, they could have explored this in a really interesting way, and they could have gotten into more of what she's going through and made this the main focus of the film. But the film doesn't do that. They keep it so focused on her relationship with Robert and the financial troubles they're having, and him going back to this girl, and, you know, the whole will they or won't they, and it's just, it's not interesting. It really isn't. I was very bored by the story, to be honest with you. I found it to be very derivative, and anytime I thought it went somewhere interesting, would just go back to that cliche stuff, and it really did not work. However, that is nothing compared to the third act of this movie, which I don't really want to spoil, but let's just say there is a revelation that happens in, like, the third act of this movie. There's something that's brought up, and I'm like, oh, that's actually really interesting, really well thought out. Let's see what Tyler Perry does with it. Let's see if he executes it well. Like, it actually seemed... I can't believe this. It actually seemed like this movie was going to get into something smart, and maybe Tyler Perry was going to give us a competent film. But instead of them doing something that could have actually been really interesting and maybe actually taken us somewhere good, what does Tyler Perry decide to do? He just goes back to the cliche routes and just turns this into basically a revenge film. That's all he really does here, and I don't want to spoil how ridiculous the third act of this movie is, but you guys just got to go and see it, honestly. It involves a boat. It's one of the dumbest things I've seen in a while, and it honestly is really offensive to, I think, you know, people who are going through what Melinda does struggle through in this movie. I mean, he just does not know how to write this kind of stuff. He really doesn't. It's just too heavy, it's too dense, and it just come across as ridiculous and offensive, and honestly, I was pissed. I was really pissed because I thought they were going to go somewhere interesting, and they really didn't. It was a complete cop-out in every sense of the word. And the way this movie ends is so abrupt and so unsatisfying that I just got up and left. Like, the second I saw credits, I left. There are some points in movies where I will stay for a little bit and kind of think about what I saw, but no, I got up and I got the hell out of there with this movie. I was just so pissed at the way it ended. And again, this is a movie that I really didn't care about that much for the first hour, but again, it did get into stuff that was somewhat interesting, and I thought it was going to go somewhere, and it just doesn't. It goes into the most cliche route possible. Think of where you think the story could go. It 100% does go there, and it makes no sense whatsoever, because the stuff that does happen in this movie, sure, it is kind of inferred, but it's not the main focus of the film. Like I said, I think the main focus of this film should have been Melinda and her anger issues and her trying to maybe harness it and kind of do something about it. That would have been interesting, but no, this movie isn't trying to give you a positive message of, you know, trying to treat if you have a mental illness and trying to deal with this stress and trying to deal with the anger. No, instead, it just goes into the most cliche route possible that basically is the equivalent of a Lifetime movie or any kind of stalker thriller you've seen, and it's just ridiculous. It really is. But the difference is the stalker from that movie is our main character, and we're supposed to care about her, and it just doesn't make any sense. And when you really look at Robert, he's really not that bad of a guy. He really isn't. I mean, yes, he does cheat on her once, but other than that, there's really nothing he does to her in this movie where it's like, oh yeah, I can totally see why she has this rage against him. I can totally see why she's really pissed at Robert. Like, it never really comes across that way. It seems like he's a guy that for the most part is trying to do the right thing, and he is trying to help her overall. He just has a lot of problems financially. He, for some reason, has this obsession with, like, inventions and all this electrical stuff that he is just constantly working on, and again, I honestly, throughout this movie, I felt bad for him. I really did. I should not be feeling bad for Robert, but I really was. And I don't know why Perry decided to take it in this direction. It really seemed like throughout the film he was trying to get us to sympathize with Melinda, but the direction he goes, there's no way I can sympathize with her after the shit she does in this movie. It is batshit craziness, and I don't know why he went there at all. The cinematography in this movie, it's whatever, it really is, but the thing that did piss me off about this movie is, again, Tyler Perry does not know how to write in a smart manner. He thinks he has to spell out everything to the audiences. The film will frequently cut to this one thing where it kind of tells you one of the themes of the movie. Like, it'll literally spell out the word that this, you know, one of the themes of the movie, like what it's actually about, and, you know, some of the deeper things it's trying to say. And it just feels so in your face. And it seems like Tyler Perry thinks the audience is dumb when it's so obvious obvious that's what the movie's about. I mean, it's obvious that this movie is about rage. It's obvious this movie is about regrets. It's obvious the movie is about, you know, anger and, you know, all this stuff that is just so obvious, and I don't know why he felt the need to spell it out. It really pissed me off, and I never really saw the need for it. The score's whatever. It's your typical score. There are points in this movie that does feel like a soap opera, along with the score, and there's not much to say there. Also, the movie is way too long, definitely. It is way too long for sure. I think the second act of this movie definitely could have been cut down. It did not at all need to be 2 hours. The movie honestly did feel quite longer, and just like most Tyler Perry's movies, they do really drag. Particularly that third act, especially once again to a certain plot point that I really fucking hated. It really dragged from there. I really couldn't stand it. Honestly, guys, Acrimony really disappointed me because, again, I wanted to go into this movie and think, maybe I'll actually watch a Tyler Perry movie that I don't hate. But the more it went on, the more I really started to hate it. It is so incompetent. It is really offensive to, like I said, people with the stuff that Melinda is dealing with. It has one of the weirdest narratives I've seen in a while, where for some reason they want us to root for this character, and I really don't get it. It has some really talented actors that honestly are kind of wasted in this movie and really don't have much of anything to deal with. Such one-note characters. It's just everything I can't stand about Tyler Perry, and honestly, I'm not going to go into his movies optimistic anymore. I really am not. I mean, I didn't really with this movie, but I did have some hope. From now on, I don't think I'm going to. I really don't. This movie was so incomprehensibly bad that I don't think I can go into a Tyler Perry movie in a, open-minded. I just don't think I can do that because he's always going to let me down. He most definitely is always going to turn the other way and just go into this dumb, ridiculous, cliche stuff that it just has no bearing on the story whatsoever. He does not know how to write an intelligent film, and I think this film very much does show that. Acrimony is easily one of the things I have seen, worst things I have seen all year, and I'm definitely going to give Acrimony overall a D. Like I said, guys, I know you guys might be like, oh, you wanted to hate this movie, but no, honestly, I didn't. Like I said, I wanted to go into it with an open mind and think maybe this could be, just okay, or maybe actually be a decent Tyler Perry film, but no, he really, he really did let me down here. I think there was some opportunities to go into some interesting stuff, but the film missed out on virtually all of them, and I was very enraged with the way this turned out. But either way, guys, in my review of Acrimony, please don't see this movie, honestly. I don't think many people are, because there was, like, no one in my theater. I don't even think many people know this movie coming out, and good, because I really don't think that you guys should check out this movie. It's not worth your time. You're gonna feel like shit after it, and it really just feels like a waste of time, to be honest with you. But that's it in my review. Hope you guys enjoy. I'll see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.